This was easily one of the most spectacular one-day rides I've ever done in my life. I rode with Greg Jeunesse, who organised the ride, and his friend Dave Main, who lives in Reno. I boarded from San Francisco to Emeryville early on Friday, then with Greg got the Amtrak to Reno, Nevada, where we spent the night with Dave's lovely family. Reno to Auburn is a 132-mile ride with approximately one-third off-road and an elevation gain of 12,000 feet. It can be broken down into 4 sections. The first starts at Dave's house in Reno, Nevada, climbs up to Mount Rose Summit Pass, then descends to Lake Tahoe. Part 2 is back in California and follows the Truckee River and then climbs up to China Wall. Part 3, Forest Hill Road, is a very remote and steep 23 miles of gravel. The final part, Part 4, is a 50-mile road section where we lose about 5,500 feet of elevation on our way to Auburn. Before I talk about the ride itself, I wanted to give an honorary mention to Amtrak. I've only ever taken one other time. That was a trip from San Francisco to Seattle. I ended up being over 24 hours late, but it really was so much more interesting than flying. This journey also did not disappoint. The California Zephyr runs all the way to Chicago, but we were just taking it 180 miles to Reno. With the many delays, it probably took us 9 hours. Even when it gets up to full speed, it feels like you could ride your bike faster. What makes Amtrak so unique are the characters you see on board. It reminds me of when I first came to America. Everyone was new and fascinating. Riding on Amtrak brings me back to those times. You see characters that you didn't think existed anymore, almost like a slice of Americana. In our carriage was a group of middle-aged black women who were going to Reno to gamble. Every last one of them had such huge personalities. They played music and laughed all the way to Reno. They were just hilarious. After an excellent breakfast prepared by Dave, we departed by 7:30. It was really cold, around 38 degrees, but the 3,500 feet of climbing in the first 11 miles kept us from freezing.
But we dropped from the road to our left, and we found a Cessna in the trees.
No way.
Whoa.
An actual Cessna?
Like a crash
Did
Cessna.
it have drug money in it?
We
Hopefully.
didn't see any.
Just got to the top of the hill, as Dave calls it. In my mind, it's kind of a mountain, almost 9,000 feet.
We then had a freezing descent down to Lake Tahoe, which is at an elevation of 6,200 feet. It's the 6th biggest lake and 2nd deepest in the US.
Wow! Unbelievable! Crazy! Look at it!
So cold.
It is freezing.
Look at this, it's beautiful.
It's just stunning, isn't it?
Oh,
Just the way the green comes down to the blue.
gorgeous.
Unfortunately, we had our first mechanical only 30 miles into the ride. Greg's broken spoke probably would not have gotten worse, but we decided not to risk it, so stopped at a bike shop in Tahoe City. We tried to be as efficient as possible, so had an early lunch while we waited for the bike. I was a little concerned because we were already 5 hours into the ride, but still had 100 tough miles remaining. Thankfully, we made excellent time as we followed the Truckee River. The off-road climb up from Donner Lake to China Wall and the tunnels was steep, but the views were spectacular.
How you doing? Oh my god. Now, are there zombies in there?
There might be.
In 1869, Leland Stanford drove in the final golden spike that connected the east and west portions of the US's first transcontinental railroad. Overnight, the pace of the country's westward expansion increased dramatically. By far the biggest engineering achievement was the carving of a railway line through the mighty Sierra. Upwards of 20,000 Chinese people were recruited to dig 15 tunnels through the granite mountains. Progress was typically just a few feet per day. It was very dangerous work in brutal conditions. Just 20 years earlier, 42 members of the famous Donner Party had succumbed to hypothermia in this area. No one knows for sure, but it is believed that over 1,000 Chinese people died completing the railroad. The Chinese also face virulent racism, which is probably why their contribution to the Transcontinental Railroad is still only a footnote. Despite their achievement and sacrifice, just 15 years later, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was signed. This barred Chinese laborers from entering the United States and placed restrictions on those already here. The tunnels themselves became obsolete in the 1920s when the railroad was rerouted.
So most sane people would call it a day, but we still have like 70 miles left with about 30 or 40 miles of gravel.
After a brief stop at Soda Springs store, we started the gravel section. Forest Hill Road gains over 3,000 feet in 23 miles. It's really remote, and around every corner we were rewarded by yet another spectacular view. The setting sun added to the drama, but we knew that it would only get colder once night was upon us. I really began to struggle at this point. It reached a low of 35 degrees and I didn't have the right clothing. We got back on the pavement at Robinson Flat. It was pitch black and I was completely exhausted and also a little dizzy. The last section was the 50-mile and 5,500 feet descent to Auburn. It was so incredibly cold. I remember hoping for some hills so that we could generate some body heat. It was also really dark. We used our bike computers to figure out the upcoming bends on the twisty descent. I wasn't sure how we could keep going, but we had no choice. The supermarket at Forest Hill offered some respite. We eventually made it to Auburn just before midnight. The only place still open was the local In-N-Out. It was hopping with teenagers. It's always somewhat jarring to be thrust back into civilization after a wilderness adventure. The next day we had to hustle to make our Amtrak in Sacramento. Oh my God, look at this, look at this, look at these beautiful bikes. The ride was such an adventure. I'll definitely be back next year, this time with much more clothing. Thanks for watching.